thewellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives. Download the app today.
This is Up for a Chat with your hosts, Cindy O'Meara and Kim Morrison.
Here we are, up for a chat about the hottest topics that are important to you, inspiring you to awaken the change within. I'm Cindy O'Meara.
And I'm Kim Morrison. And what a delight to have an incredibly special soul on Up for a Chat this week. Beautiful Nelum Dharmapriya. What a beautiful name. This exquisite doctor, GP with over 20 years experience, has dedicated herself to health. And it's not just through her learnings and teachings, but she's also experienced a lot. She's witnessed deterioration of health right through to death. And every day in her clinic, she would do it all that she can to prevent it. So when she was in the same place as her patients, I guess this is where we get to understand and see what her beautiful journey has been like. Welcome to Up for a Chat, beautiful Nelum.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim. And Cindy, thank you for having me on today.
Before we get into the journey of what it's been like to be on the other side of being the patient rather than the doctor, would you mind taking us on a little journey as to what brought you into the GP world? Where are you from? Why did this become such a passion for you?
So I grew up in Sri Lanka. I was born and raised in Sri Lanka on amazing Sri Lankan food. And I'm sure you've tried it and you know what I mean. That was fine. And then I went to study in Scotland, in the University of Aberdeen. So I was in the UK for about 20 years studying and then working as a GP. And GP was always my passion because it just fit me like a glove. I love hearing people's stories and I'm very kind of inquisitive so it's just that connection. That connection is what made GP special for me. And so I did what all other doctors do. I studied, I was taught to diagnose and treat. That's what we're taught. And I thought I was doing a good job. And then when I have two boys and when they were when they were 8 and 11, we decided to move to Australia. And one of the chief motivating factors was the weather, because I lived in Manchester in England and you know what I mean? It's grey and drizzly. Well, actually, it's very similar to what today's like in Brisbane. And when we kind of came to visit Brisbane, it was like, okay, this is where we have to be. So we moved to Brisbane in 2009, and I started working as a GP here, and then a few years later, my husband and I, we built our medical centre and in Narangba, in the north of Brisbane, in Moreton Bay actually, and we've been here since. So it's been great. It's been a great experience. I've always been, I care for my patients. I really want to do the best that I possibly can. And I thought I was doing that. I was doing that until I started in my late 40s, early 50s, going through menopause. And like every single woman who goes through menopause, experiencing the symptoms of weight gain, particularly around the belly. I snored so badly. I mean, it was ridiculous. Whenever I went away with my sister, we would get into shouting matches because I would snore and she couldn't sleep. It was just, and we'd vow never to do this again until next time. And it was just, it was consistently repeated. And then, but the worst thing was the brain fog. For me, that was really terrifying because I found that if I left my computer at work, I would forget medications, I would forget names of medical conditions. And it was really terrifying because I thought that I would eventually forget how to be a doctor. But really the crunch came when I did my blood tests just after I was 50, and that showed that I was pre-diabetic and that all my markers showed that I was very much heading towards heart disease. And my mother was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes at the age of 52, and all her family literally either had complications of it or died of diabetes-related complications. And I could feel it. I knew that this was where I was heading. And this was despite doing what I considered everything right, because I was eating low fat. I was exercising like a mad woman. I was running and jumping up and down. Every day I was doing something. And this was exactly what I told my patients to do. And I always considered myself healthy. So I couldn't understand, well, what was it? How come I was in this state? So then I realized that I had to look for an alternative. What was going on? And I started reading, and that's how I found out about metabolic health, insulin resistance, and having like a bigger picture. And it was a little bit terrifying, because it meant that I had to unlearn and relearn so much of the stuff that I had been taught. And it was a massive endeavor, because I had to literally, kind of everything that I'd learned over the last, well, it's 30 years now since I graduated. I had to relearn, and it's been an incredible journey. And well, 3 months after I started going, because I mean, obviously, I'm sure your readers know that, or your listeners know that, to manage insulin resistance and to manage metabolic health, we really, one of the key factors is to be on a lower carb diet or a lifestyle. And that was really quite difficult for me, coming from my kind of Sri Lankan background. And it took me a whole 3 months to get my head around this. But once I did, it was 3 months, and my weight started to drop, my all that around the belly started to go. But 3 months later, my blood tests, that was the key, was that I'd reversed my pre-diabetes, and all my metabolic markers were down to within normal. I don't snow. I'm 55 years old, and after 25 years, I do not snow, which is incredible. Mm-hmm. I'm not on any medications. I just feel really good. And so then I thought that, well, I see my patients are typically all like me. I see women between 40 to 70, and they all say the same thing. And that's when I thought, well, I need to share this with them. And that's how I started. And that's where I am.
First of all, I got quite a few questions, but the first one is, what was the book that started you on this?
Oh, well, it has to be the Obesity Code. When I didn't know where to start, because I knew I had to start. And it was so interesting, because I was like, where do I go for this? I didn't know what I was looking for either. Because we're not taught about metabolic health in the way that now I understand it. And it was, how sometimes you see that you're kind of talking to yourself or whatever, and then the phone picks up something and here something appears. So it was as if suddenly I got an email from one of our doctor newsletters, and in there was a low carb GP who had written about something about low carb, and there it was, Obesity Code by Dr. Jason Fung. And it was like, oh my goodness, this is it. I have to read this. And it was like, it revolutionized the way I looked at health. It was amazing.
Dr. Jason Fung is incredible with his information, and that book is wonderful. And the fact that he was one of your peers as opposed to, somebody else that was writing it, I think that really helps a lot.
Yeah.
So then how was it going from diagnosing and treating with medicine and medications to then changing your whole practice to what you do today, which is very much lifestyle?
Absolutely. Well, it was a process. And first I really kind of knuckled down on the science. And that's what I first started sharing with my patients. And after the first year, I realized that, okay, it's not enough to teach the science, because what I realized was that people knew what to do, but they couldn't quite do it. Some of them, not all, but a majority. So then I realized that there was something else. There was something else, and that something else was mindset. And that was a real issue, that that component. And then also realizing that the lifestyle, it wasn't just about what you ate, but all the, the stress management, the sleep, looking at, all of that, connections, community, spirituality, all of that really is important. So it's not that I don't have anything against medications, but I use these first, or I use these lifestyle and nutrition lifestyle factors first. And see, in all the years that I've been a doctor, these nutrition and lifestyle, it's a lip service that we pay because we don't know. And I myself can say that because I did not know actually what to say to my patients about nutrition or about exercise. I would say, go off and exercise, go off and, eat better. But I didn't know what that meant because we're not taught that. What does it mean to manage stress? What does it mean? What do you mean by getting a good night's sleep? We don't know any of that, most doctors.
So you had to re-educate yourself in order to not only teach yourself, but then you had to go and then teach your patients. So I'm coming to you. My bloods are terrible. I've got obviously pre-diabetes, let's say. I'm a middle-aged woman. I'm putting on weight. My mind's going crazy. And I know nothing about diet, nutrition. I've been going to GPs. None of the drugs are working. What would you do for me? What would you?
A lot of the time, what I would do, Cindy, is people would come in and that's exactly what they'd say. So I first say, well, let's get some blood tests done. And then when they come in, I go through their blood tests and I show them what I see. So from a metabolic point of view, so I would briefly introduce them to that, because a lot of people haven't heard these words. These are new words. They seem very complicated. So I try and simplify it and talk about energy generation in the body and things. And then I give them the option. I say, well, there is a lot that we can do just by focusing on, let's first start with nutrition and then, see how you progress. And then we will go on to the other elements, because I find that nutrition is probably the easiest because it's more within a person's control. But we do have to, we address, so in my practice, I address nutrition, and then we also a little bit of fasting in there, gut health, chronic inflammation, sleep, stress, all of that has to be part of it. So it's not an easy, quick consultation. It always takes time. And so then I invite them. I say I do now, what I do at Narangba is I have a comprehensive appointment, which is a 60-minute appointment where that still doesn't give me enough time to explain the why, but at least I can get them started on this is, and I give them resources and I talk about like the what they need to do. And then once they start feeling better, and they say, they'll come back and say, well, I don't feel as hungry. I'm not as, I sleep a little bit better. And then slowly they'll find that, that their clothes are not as tight, particularly. I don't really fixate on weight. I feel that that's another huge issue, but a lot of people do like to measure their weight, so that's fine. But really I say check, either do your measurements around your waist or just have a pair of pants that you wear that you can actually see that things are loosening. But so that's how, I mean, so not everybody wants to go down that path, Cindy. It is a lot of hard work. But for people who do, I think it's very rewarding. And then the other thing is then maintaining it. And that's not easy either. You know, I think the society that we live in and the environment that we live in makes it so difficult to maintain this kind of lifestyle because, you know, there's so much stuff out there that kind of calls to us, isn't it? And everything's made in a factory or, you know, all these toxins. So it's really not easy. But I think once people understand what happens in the body, then I think it is easier.
Yeah.
You know, there's a big thing around why people get told to do things, but most of us, we actually get really committed to it, or our mindset shifts when we know what, why, how, when, and who. And those kind of things are so important to many of us who want to make lifestyle changes. Otherwise, just give me the magic pill, I'll take it, and voila, everything will happen. So when you explain to someone about metabolic resetting or understanding the pre or markers that are showing things towards, say, type 2 diabetes, are people really engaged in understanding this when you actually really start to educate them on the what, why, who, when, and how? Is that important to you and them, do you find?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I completely believe that people need to know the why. Otherwise, it's only a short-term change. And just my own experience, I just think back, I have heard about low carb over the years, but it was, well, firstly, so whenever I used to, if I ever felt that I was, you know, my clothes were getting tighter, what I would do is I would cut down my rice, because that's what I used to eat, a little bit. You know, I'd cut down for 2 weeks. I'd feel a little bit more comfortable. And then I'd go back to eating exactly what I ate before. And I look back and I think, like, what? Why didn't you just carry on? But because I didn't know the why, I didn't know what it did to my body. So it would work in the short term, but I'd be like, okay, well, now I'm fine. Now I go back to eating what I mean, but that's how we are, right? And so
I just want to say that here you are, a highly educated medical doctor, and with respect,
exactly the same.
with respect, we keep doing what we've always done. We'll keep getting what we've always got, right? And so it's actually quite a blessing, because I imagine for so many people who don't understand the what, the why, the how, the who, and the when they finally get it. My daughter was a top ballerina, Nelum, and she just didn't eat. It's not that food wasn't her thing.
Yes.
And she was getting very, very, very slim. And in the ballet world, that's almost acceptable. So it wasn't picked up. And I kept trying to help her. We had her bloods done. She was very low in iron. There was a lot of pre-markers. There was actually an inflammatory response going on. And when one of the teachers who turned around and was quite into nutrition, she was a guest teacher, she pulled us aside and she just looked at Taylor and she said, if you want to jump higher, if you want to get more explosive results off the stage, you are going to have to eat differently. And she had a very big approach the same way as Cindy. I'm not kidding. That day, Taylor ate meat. She turned it around. Like there was just a switch got flicked. Is it that quick for everybody when they understand the why?
Yes, I think if they understand the why, because insulin resistance is not difficult to understand when it's explained properly. And one of the things I run workshops, and I used to actually run a metabolic health clinic here at Narangba Doctors, but it took so much time that I had to take it outside of work because I just don't have the capacity to offer it at work. But that's what people say. They say that as when they hear and see it, it's so simple and they can't get it out of their head. So I think it is so important. I really love explaining to people because you can see it. People just sit there and they just look. They sit there with their mouths open because it's such a shock. What we've been doing to ourselves all these years, with this, with the way we've been eating and not being told the simple things that can make a difference and the science behind it. I mean, obviously, I am a science person, so I believe that the science is important. But I do believe that I think if without just the how is not enough. I think if you understand the why and then introduce all those other things that you said, Kim, I think that is the way. And also guidance. I think people really struggle to do this alone, even if they know the why, because I think our environment is so stacked against us in the way that we, kind of from an evolutionary point of view, how we ate, how we behaved, what we did. That's not what we do now. So it's very, very difficult. So I think having some guidance, having some coaching is really important. Some follow-up. Yeah.
Just going back to England, when you were in England as a GP and then coming to Australia, I have a double-barreled question here. One is about how long you've been a GP and have you seen the health of humanity decline, number one, and number two, who's healthier, the English or the Australians?
Right. So I've been a GP since 2001. So it's 23 years now. And absolutely. I mean, just little things. When I talk about fatty liver, when I graduated, we only saw fatty liver. And the way we were taught was fatty liver was because of alcohol excess, and that's the cause of fatty liver. So to this day, the first thing that comes to my mind with a fatty liver, I mean, now, not so much now, is you must be drinking, right? You must be a drinker. And we never saw fatty liver. I never saw fatty liver in a child. Never, ever, ever. But we see that now. We see, so many young kids being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, right? Alzheimer's disease. I mean, and conditions like ADHD and ASD, is it that are we just better at diagnosing them, or are they actually on the increase? And what is increasing them? It can't be genetics. I mean, it can't, in 50 years, our genetics won't change if it hasn't changed for 200,000 years. So, there's so much. It's a shambles, isn't it? I mean, I think it's a disaster. I think we're a little bit, right. In terms of UK and Australia, it's surprising. I always thought when I came to Australia that I would see happier people because there's so much more sunlight here. But no, I think people are still the same. They're still the same. They have different problems. And I worked in different types of practices, both in the UK and Australia. And, when we think of mental health, it's exactly the same, just different. But the numbers are the same. It's very, very interesting. But I think we're definitely better off at this moment in time than the States. But I think we're heading there. We're catching up very, very quickly.
It's quite sad.
Oh, it is very
sad. Yeah. I went to a dinner in Melbourne recently in the last 6 weeks. And I just thought there'd be a couple of people there. And it ended up there was 30 people in the room. And the gentleman who put the dinner on heads up Low Carb Down Under.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And he got us all in a circle and he asked each of us to say who we were, what we did. And that was it, just basically something like that. So we went around the room and most of them were medical doctors, all the way from gastroenterologists to neurologists to GPs and all over the country. There were 2 hunters. They hunted in Victoria and they provided wild meats for their community. A podcaster who was also I think he was a sleep expert, like science-based and had already, all that stuff. And I was the last to speak because I was beside him. He started with the person, which was Dr. Ravi. So I met Dr. Ravi and I think you might know that name.
Yes.
So all the way around and it got to me and I went, well, you know what? I think I'm out of a job. I've been a nutritionist for 44 years, and I've never heard the amount of people that are now changing, and these are GPs, neurologists, gastroenterologists, are now changing to lifestyle and nutrition. So I felt really like it's a turn in the corner that
I think so.
More and more people and our GPs and our doctors are starting to realize that they need to work on lifestyle and nutrition before they start dishing out medications. So it gave me hope that there is a turn. But one of the GPs, or I think he was a GP, put his hand up and he said, Cindy, do you really see a change in the, have you seen this happen? I said, I would never have been at a dinner with this many people that are all in medicine who think the same way as me, ever. I said, I was the witch, the crazy one, the one that believed that butter was better and, real food we need to eat, not breakfast cereals, bread, plastic cheese, and all of those things. So he doubted it, but I don't. Like I've met you. I met you, I think, at Low Carb Down Under.
Yes.
And meeting Dr. Ravi. I just feel like it's all starting.
It's a slow change, but it's happening. Yeah,
it's happening.
So. Yeah,
Max Ghislaine, and I fear for them in a way, because your regulatory body, which I'm not going to name, but your regulatory body is quite what's the word? Strict in what you're allowed to say. Are they strict in you talking about diet and lifestyle, or are they allowing you to talk about diet and lifestyle?
In GP land, there isn't really, because that's our remit. We are supposed to be holistic practitioners. But yeah, I think this is a really interesting question, Cindy, because a lot of my colleagues, there is that I was asked to by one of my Sri Lankan friends in Melbourne give a talk to a group of Sri Lankans about metabolic health, and amongst that there were a few doctors, GPs, and one guy who is a really good GP. He asked me, well, Nelum, what about when the cholesterol goes off and the LDL, all of that? And anyway, we had this discussion. And then he said, well, if we do this, could we keep the cardiologist happy? And I was like, well, is that why we are doing medicine, to keep a cardiologist happy? And I think, this is, I don't know, there's this standard of care that isn't really even evidence-based. It's just what at one time was a guideline, and now it has become set in stone. And so people are afraid of these guidelines, that somehow stepping out of them is going to cause a problem. But I really feel, I do feel that without a personal experience, it is very, very difficult for a doctor to change everything that they have learned. GPs, what we do is we have a very broad kind of knowledge, rather than kind of deep in any one place, because that's the expectation of us. So I cannot expect my GP colleagues who I work with, 9 or 10 others here, to feel as passionately and know as much as I do on this subject, because I had a personal experience that led me down this path. But I can't remember the question, Cindy. I got carried away there.
I was talking about how things are changing.
Oh, and yes.
APRA.
Yeah.
Oh,
APRA, that's right.
Your regulatory body, and are they, are you going to be picked up on it?
Yeah.
That was
well. Listen, I personally think that I know, because I feel it in myself. I have seen it in my patients, the immense benefit that this way of what I now show them, how it helps them. I am deprescribing. And truly, I don't care if somebody comes behind me, because I am doing the right work. Okay. And I'm committed. I have conviction. and you have to be courageous, because otherwise, what's the point? So, I am doing, my notes are good. It's all there, but I think that's crazy that we have to be scared of advising people to eat well and get some sleep and manage their stress. And somehow we're worried that, because I'm not prescribing the statin or I'm not doing this, that I'm going to get in trouble. But a lot of doctors do think like that. But I think, you have to have, be committed and have that conviction that you're doing the right thing and just go for it.
Well, I want to thank you for your bravery. I really do. I look at all the doctors that are speaking out, and I'm seeing more and more. So, yeah, thank you for your bravery. Kim, I noticed you were going to say something. Sorry.
No, don't. I was about to say the same thing. We love brave, courageous, committed, convicted doctors like yourself. So thank you for that. I'm going to go back to something you said in your opening, which is I'm just curious.
Yes.
Snoring. You talked about snoring, and then it sounded to me like you gave up rice and you stopped snoring.
But truly, yes.
What was it?
Well, I found out that the reason that for me, why I probably snored, was because I had excess fat developing in my, or kind of depositing in my tongue. So when I started losing that visceral fat, I didn't realize I had it in my tongue. I mean, most people don't know, but once I started losing that fat, it just, I don't know. I mean, it's amazing. So
I'm sure a lot of marriages could be helped with this. So if people understand that the tongue can store visceral fat, and through changing your diet to a low carb, more high fat diet, you actually reduce the visceral fat. Is visceral fat the same as, or how would you describe it different to the brown fat that we hear a lot about?
So brown fat is actually good fat. Okay, that is in certain parts of the body, particularly the upper back and areas, and that fat has more mitochondria in it, and it generates heat. So that's why the reason why it's brown is because it's got more mitochondria, and it so that's different. Visceral fat is the fat that is deposited in areas that really shouldn't have fat. So in the abdominal cavity, right there, that's where we have our organs, all our important organs. But a lot of us, particularly when the stress related, so the cortisol related fat deposition happens within that, in that belly area, in that visceral area. But anyway, so also organ fat, all of that. So fat in the liver, fat in the pancreas, all of that. These are fat in the muscle. These are what we call ectopic. They're not supposed to be there. That's not where we're supposed to deposit fat. And this fat, because it's not supposed to be there, causes inflammation in the body, because this is looked at as this is a foreign. Why is this fat here? This shouldn't be here. Let's get our immune system to get this kind of under control. So this is how it starts. I mean, it's a very complex process, but the underlying pathophysiology is quite straightforward. So once you understand that it's all to do with insulin and insulin's action on how we store energy and how we kind of utilize that, then it makes it really quite simple, what you need to be doing for it.
One of the other things I noticed from the beginning of the conversation is in your team at Whole Food Revolution, you have a GP, a coach, and a nurse. It's almost like the GP is the what's going on, explaining everything. The coach will support your emotional attachment to the why you need to do it, and the nurse will show you how to do it.
Absolutely. That is exactly how we do it.
What a team. What a great way. It's like the triangular effect of mindset, body, and even spirituality. This is I've never seen a doctor, a GP, have a life or health coach as a part of their team. What made you choose that?
Well, I realized after that first year first year, it was really interesting. I the first time I met Cindy was at Low Carb Down Under a few years ago, and I happened to get an opportunity to talk on there, just in one of the small rooms. I was only a year or so into this low carb journey, and I talked about how I ran my low carb practice and the results that I'd got. And there was a gentleman who got up after I spoke and said, Nelum, I love what you're doing, but have you thought of the psychological and the mental health aspects of of eating like this, or this lifestyle? And I hadn't, because I was all about the science. I mean, I really didn't have capacity. I was like up to my eyeballs in science. But that was very interesting. So then that's the first thing. And then I realized that, people who were doing really well suddenly would fall off the wagon as such. And then it would take them a long time to come back to it. Or some people, they knew what to do, but they just couldn't take the steps. And that's when I realized that there's more. It's not enough. For some people, like for me, I think just my personality, realizing the why was enough. But for a lot of other people, it's not enough, that there's a lot more emotional eating, food addiction, traumas from the past. All of these things are so important. So without addressing that, I don't think you can. I think that's the most important thing. And then you address those, and then you come to the science, I think, is probably the way it should work.
And I think Cindy and I have always noticed too, no matter what programs or protocols we teach, people, and you even did it yourself, people do it, they finish on day 7 of 8 weeks of a protocol, and day 1 of week 9, it's like, wow, I've done that, and they go back to the way they're eating. But what you and Cindy teach isn't a 8-week block or a 10-week or 12-week block. This is a lifestyle block. How do both of you, and you can both answer this, how do both of you think we can revolutionize the fact that once you give up a food like, say, Tim Tams, Diet Coke, even just every day some health foods that are very loaded with sugar, how do we teach people that that's a no-go zone forevermore?
Well, I use 4 strategies, and I start off with whole food. And I think you're very much on there, Cindy, just real food. And I explain what that means and why it's important. And then the next step is prioritize protein, because once people are eating a lot of people say I'm eating like high protein. It's not high protein. It's just you need to eat enough. You need to eat what is the right amount for you. And because we eat so little protein, usually we eat about 30% of what we should, anything above that is considered high. But really, if you eat the right amount of protein, you are full. And when you're full, you don't crave, and you don't have that need to constantly snack. So that's how I start. And then introducing the low carb is very easy, because if you're prioritizing protein, you are automatically low carb, because most protein tends to be in animal foods. So if you don't have an ethical, any reason why you're not eating animal foods, then that works. And then adding in some healthy fats. So that's how I do it. And so then people say things like, well, I've not felt, first I'm not hungry. And then, I don't really feel like I need that Tim Tam. But you need to address those times when people are stressed, because that's when they reach for it. But on a day-to-day, they can manage without these things, because you put those other factors into place. So that's how I do it.
1 was real food, 2 was prioritized protein. What's 3 and 4?
Low carb.
Low carb.
And not to fear healthy fat.
Oh, love this.
So, Neelam, I have a question for you about addiction and food
Yes.
addiction. So, a girlfriend of mine rang me 2 days ago crying, and so many things are happening in her life, but one is her daughter, who is the same age as my youngest daughter, and they were best friends through school, played together. And her daughter has somehow become highly addicted to food. She's 30, sits at 190 kilos, cannot walk anymore, sits in her bed, has got ulcerations in her legs. She's just an absolute mess. And she's in the system, and the system allows her full access to food, full access. About a week ago, her daughter, now this has to be critical, like she is killing herself. Her daughter said, I need help. So now there's got to be a meeting as to whether they reduce the food that's available to her, reduce her availability to money, because she just orders huge amounts of food from takeaway shops. I have, over the years, suggested many things, and nothing has worked. Nothing. What do you do for someone like that? Are they destined to just slowly be in demise and basically take their own life? Because that's what they're doing. And they've tried, dietitians, psychologists, like she's in the system, and it's just nothing's working. Now, she's not alone.
No.
So what you're doing is, the whole lifestyle thing, but this is like a drug addiction. This is worse than I've ever seen before, where she can't see that what she's doing is digging her grave with her teeth, basically, or a fork. What do you do? What do you do?
Well, all addictions are the same. It's not, and the problem is that I think food addiction is really very, very hard, because other addictions, say it's alcohol or drugs or porn or whatever, you can keep away from. You can say to somebody, you need to avoid it, but you can't do that for food, because we need to sustain ourselves. So I think it's really hard. And I don't know whether, I'm sure you've read the book Dopamine Nation. Have you read that? That's an amazing book by Anna Lemke about treating addictions. And
no, I haven't read it.
So. You should. Oh my gosh, it is the most. She's a psychiatrist. She's absolutely amazing. What I realized from that is the courage and the strength that it takes for an addict to maintain, to avoid their addiction. It is a struggle every single day, and that for most of us, we are just a step or two away from being there ourselves. So I think it is really, really difficult. Saying that, having treated many different addictions over the years, or tried to, I've realized that at the end of the day, it comes down to that person. That person has to want it. That people around could, there is not a lot. We can be there to support, but it is the individual who has to decide that this is the day. It's really, really hard. So I really wish your friends, your friend's daughter well, because it's going to be a hard, well, even if she does recover, it's going to be a hard recovery, because it's going to be there all the time. So, yeah.
I have another girlfriend whose daughter did the same thing, and she ended up not taking her life, but couldn't stop the addiction, and it ended up killing her. And I watch this mother now, and it's tough. It's really tough. And I say to my girlfriend all the time, I'm here for you. We've tried many things. Yeah, I could see the addiction when she was about 16. I could see her really loving food, and maybe if it was nipped in the butt then. And I think this is a warning for parents to, if we don't start looking after our kids. And I have two friends, two daughters that are in like two different addictions though, but all around food. One's overeating, the other one's undereating, and I just kind of go, we as parents have to take a stand and have to make a difference. The thing is that it always seems to be crises that stop us. So for you, it was a crisis, well, a semi-crisis for you, in that this isn't right. I shouldn't be doing this. This isn't what's happening. But we all seem to go through these crises, and that's what seems to make change. And if we don't change, then we end up in a bigger crisis. And I would just love it if people would just wake up and just realize that not only is food about us and our health, but food is also about the planet. If we choose the right foods that are grown the right ways, and animal husbandry that's done the right thing, then we're actually saving the planet. We're part of a solution, not a problem. But when I see a young girl like my girlfriend's daughter, I cry. I don't know what to do.
Yes,
and you're right. It is the individual that we just have to work with, those that are going to change. And she has yelled out for help, which maybe is
that's a huge step.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good step.
First time.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
I think we have to also realize, and I think this is where you've been going with this, Nelum, is emotions are the biggest driver for behaviors. And what sits underneath there is what's important to us, what we value. Now, if we've lost our sense of self, if we don't feel we're worthy, if we don't feel love or connection or safety, any of those things, or we've got unresolved past fears and traumas, that is almost, we've got to go back to that place before we can change a behavior, because emotions drive behavior. So whether you're angry or super happy, it will drive the outcome of how you behave. Do you both agree then that yes, food is a real big issue and a wonderful part of our life, and it's got the positives and the negatives, but I think underneath it all is this unresolved negative emotions that are driving the addictions and behaviors? Am I right or wrong?
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Yeah, I think it's so true. I mean, you see it time and time again. And if you think about, I mean, just the simple example here in my practice, when 4-year-olds come for their immunizations, they get a lollipop. Now, I tried a few years ago to say, this is the wrong message. We're giving the wrong message. There was such like, no, but this is what we do, and this is what, there's been studies to show that that sugar helps pain. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just a tiny little thing, but we are so, we're conditioned, aren't we? This is just like, there's no other way. I said we could give stickers, we can blow balloons, there's so many things we could do, but the lollies are still happening. So, that's just that the pain is rewarded by a sweet. So, that's what happens in all our life, isn't it? You go to and see somebody in the hospital, you take them chocolates. It's all about food. It's amazing that's how we've grown up, and that's what we're teaching our children as well.
And you get a McDonald's voucher in a sports game if you win, or you're right. We are just saying it's good. When you do something good, you get rewarded, and you get rewarded with junk. Yes. Lollies, sugar, junk, It's a matter of just changing that narrative. And I think that more and more parents are thinking that way, and more doctors are thinking that way. And good on you for asking in your clinic, well, could we change it? Have they changed it?
No, but we're having another practice meeting, and I'm going to put my foot down this time and say,
oh, we can bring in healthy lollipops, the beautiful Electropops, or there's actually a beautiful treat that is still perhaps sweet, but it's very healthy. But then I don't know, because when I had people knock on my door at Halloween and I had beautiful date squishies and all these things, they looked at me and basically said they wanted to do a trick on me. They thought it was awful. And I was trying to change the narrative. But we had the same thing as school fundraisers, guys, don't we? It's chocolate fundraising. But when we have here up on the Sunshine Coast mango trays for fundraising, I support that wholeheartedly. Do you think, though, with your next meeting, there could be things around how we reward the children with something more healthy, but it still has, because sugar is like an opiate. It's something that does release in us. How do we fix that gap?
I don't know. I think, well, I mean, truly, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, it's not, this is one small thing that we can do. And I think as a medical practice, I don't think we should be giving any child a lollipop because it's the wrong message. It's the wrong message. And it's also telling mums or parents, it's all right to give a lollipop when Bubby's crying or upset. But, that's that conditioning, isn't it? Then that child associates a sweet or something like that every time they're upset. And that's how they grow up. And that's what you said, Kim. Then you grow up, you're an adult, and here you are, you're upset, you've had a bad day, you're stuck in the traffic, whatever, and you want your wine or your chocolate or whatever it is that you have a lifetime getting conditioned with. So it's not easy because this is, there's a lot going on here. But I think just that one little thing, just to show that, well, we are not associated with that. We don't want to, that's not the message we want to give, is all I want to say. Because I think the other stuff has to be much more at a societal level. And I think that's the problem, isn't it? That, it's how do we break this cycle?
What do you do? Yes. No. Sorry, I was going to say.
I think it's a grassroots movement.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because it's not going to happen at the top.
No.
They're not going to change the food. They're not going to change the lolly. They're not going to change the food at the hospital, which is, to me, such a disconnect to health. They're not going to change any of those. So for me, I believe it is a grassroots movement, and you're part of that grassroots movement in the GP world. And, Kim's her grassroots movement in all the fields that she works in, which is neurolinguistic programming and hypnotherapy and using oils. We know the power of, essential oils. Tell you stories on frankincense, couldn't we? But we won't. But blows my mind what oils do, like rose and peppermint and frankincense. And Kim has saved our family many times with her beautiful oils. So
it's that messaging of back to nature, real food. Plants are incredible food. Food is medicine. Hippocrates said it many years ago, and let medicine be thy food. If we could just look to nature, she has so many answers. And because of the way we are as a society now with social media and so many different mixed messages, it's so available, junk food, and people see it as easy accessibility. But you two, all three of us, are at the forefront of trying to create that shift and change and give people the reason why it's not healthy. I think if, when I look at grandmas or parents go, oh, it's just one lollipop or it's just one biscuit. But you do that multiple times a week, and that's where the problem lies. Beautiful, Nelum. I know we could all talk with you for hours and hours, but could you tell us a little bit more about Whole Food Revolution, and if you're available online, or what are the things you offer, and how can people follow you? Because you are a trailblazer in our eyes, and we want to make sure people know who and where you are.
Well, Whole Food Revolution came about because when I realized that I didn't have time and the capacity in my working week to be able to share the knowledge that I had gained with my patients. That's how it started. So I took it outside of work, and I decided that I would run workshops. And then the two women that I work with, they're friends. Deb is a nurse, and she's worked with me for years. I mean, we don't work together anymore. And so I know her. And Ronit is also a friend in a different capacity, and she's a life coach. And so we got together, and it all happened it wasn't that I had this plan of having these. Deb said, I'd love to be involved. And then months later, I was talking to Ronit, and we'd been friends for years. And she said, what do you mean? I've been keto for years, right? And then that's how it came. And so now what we do is we run 1-day workshops, and we also run a 16-week holistic health revolution coaching program. So that's via Zoom every week. So that is our big thing that we do. And then we do these one day workshops. And the other thing that we do is we do a kind of what we call emotional eating mindset retreat. So it's a 6-hour online workshop as well. So that's what we do. And this year we've not done as much, only because the beginning of the year I had some difficulty, so I couldn't actually commit to time. So we do what we can. So the 4-month, the 16-week program is starting at the end of July, and we go through. So it's all those, as you said, Kim, those we work on those 3. So the 3 pillars. So the science of health, growth mindset, and healthy lifestyle. So every single subject that we cover, we'll cover it in those ways. And the 1-day workshops is more of a foundational kind of shop, so that just to give people an idea, we still teach a lot of the science. And so that's what we do. So Whole Food Revolution is our website, and we have a lovely community page called a Facebook page called Whole Food Revolution Community. It's a very, very supportive group of people, men and women. So people can join, and there's a lot of information. We're on there live, and we have fun. We run picnics. We have an annual picnic that we do, and so we try really hard to make it fun and engage people. And I enjoy that, and Ronit and Deb, we all really enjoy that aspect of it.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. We'll make sure that everybody gets those websites and Facebook pages. Do people need to see you before they can do these Whole Food Revolution workshops, or can they just say, I want to change my lifestyle, I'm coming in?
No, they don't need to see me. Okay. A lot of them initially were my patients, but that's not the case anymore. No, and they can just they can decide to just join up. In terms of seeing me at Narangba Doctors, just because I think for a lot of patients who come, some people come looking for me or looking for a low carb or carnivore, or they're on this journey and there's nobody to support them. So I don't take regular new patients, but I do take patients who are interested in metabolic health, because I feel that we're on the same path and I can help them, and they understand where I'm coming from, so we're on the same we understand each other, and it's much easier then. So so I do take patients who new patients, but only if they're metabolic health. So
it's interesting talking to some of the doctors that I had that dinner with, in that they have waiting lists that are hundreds.
Yeah.
And so what they're doing now is they are employing some of my students from the Nutrition Academy. They're employing them to, first of all, just have a consultation with them, see how quickly they need to see the doctor, and then talk, the consultant talks to the doctor. The doctor says, right, I need this blood test, this blood test, this blood test. Let's get them done. Let's see where they're standing. And then they start on the program.
Right.
Because unless it's an emergency, of course, but they start on the program. And it's their way of getting through these people that are on this waiting list, which is months and months. And I think you're the same, aren't you? You just would be the same. People are hanging out to see you guys. There needs to be more of you. Is there an association that you belong to? Is it the Low Carb Down Under?
Yes, Low Carb Down Under.
A website that people can go to see people like you who can't get in to see you or live in another state, or I understand they can probably do your program. They could live anywhere in the world and
They
do
could
your
live,
program.
but there's Low Carb Down Under is where all the practitioners, and that's not just medical people, but health coaches, nutritionists, anybody who is affiliated to the low carb world. There's an address book. They have all the contacts there, so they can. Now I was going to look. No, this is the Australasian Metabolic Health Society, but this is for doctors.
Okay.
So there's the Australasian Metabolic Health Society that's just only recently been founded, and it's great because that we didn't have a low carb entity like that actually educated GPs. Well, saying that, Whole Food Revolution was the first entity. We did the first GP workshop. At the beginning of last year, we did. There were how many? 15 GPs that came. There was a podiatrist and there was a dietitian also that came, and we taught them. So we were the first to do that. But it is difficult to treat GPs, not because it's difficult to teach them, but because it's difficult to advertise. I have a very small social media presence. I do not have the ability to advertise, so I couldn't really get that off. So I'm glad that there's somebody else doing it.
I went to a local gastroenterologist, Dr. Andrew McIntyre, who was actually speaking at the Nutrition Academy this year. So years and years and years ago, he put on a talk for GPs and the public, and I was blown away by the amount of GPs in the room. Now, most of them was just GPs not doing anything different. But I think he sparked something in them. I'm trying to think. I think it was him and Stapleton, Dr. Stapleton, who's a radiographer, a radiologist. I can never remember which one he is. But Dr. Stapleton was a type 1 diabetic at the age of 45. He becomes type 1 diabetic and realizes that what the dietitians are saying and the insulin that he's taking is ruining his health. And so he goes low carb and carnivore. I don't think he's gone carnivore, but he's gone low carb. And his story is incredible. And I think the two of those spoke. So this was years ago, probably a decade ago. Wow. But I saw little bits of it then, but now it's so exciting. So the Australian Metabolic Health, AMH, is what we need to look up to
Australasian Metabolic Health Society. So this is for any doctor who is interested in learning about metabolic health. But Low Carb Down Under is where all the information is about practitioners. And Low Carb Down Under have announced their next event, which is in September. Yes.
And I see you're speaking.
No, I'm not speaking.
Oh, I thought you were speaking.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm speaking at Tracy McBeat's event in Melbourne. That's next week. But no, I'm not speaking at. Yeah, that's right. But I'm really, because I thought I was. They usually have it in October, and I'm away in October, and I thought, oh well, but I can make it, so I'm really excited. Yeah.
Good. I thought I saw an earlier one, but I thought, Nelum speaking. But maybe I was looking at an old one. But yeah, congratulations with everything you're doing. And I know I can say on behalf of Kim and I that we think you are a brave human being that is changing the face of what is happening out there in healthcare. And it's about bloody time. That's all I can say.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me and chatting with me. That's great.
Thank you.
You're a trailblazer and we love you. Thank you so, so much.
You're welcome.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives.
Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.